Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome. This is Ramesh Khan and you're watching Fact Sheet TV, where we'll bring you latest from around the globe with an exclusive focus on Asia. The biggest story emerging out of Asia is the ever worsening trading ties between USA and India. And the one big question that it leads to is that will Trump administration punish India for setting a template in how to deal with Donald Trump administration by not giving into their pressure and by circumventing their deadlines? Is Trump seeing India's reluctance of opening up its market as a challenge to his authority? Now that's a key question here we'll have to keep in our minds as we move forward. So now let's look at the larger equation here. Because on the face of it, we only know about one or maybe two tariffs, but India is looking at five tariffs. So what is India looking at initially? We know that Donald Trump recently has talked about 25% trading tariff that India is looking at if it does not meet the 1st August deadline, which sort of is imminent. Now the second deadline that India had initially for 50 days, now it has been pushed back to 12 days, is for being a trading partner of Russia. Now we know that initially Donald Trump had announced that he's going to give Russia 50 days to agree to a truce with Ukraine, but now it has been pushed ahead to 12 days. Now this tariff is on India. It applies because India is a big trading partner of Russia, and all the trading partners will get slapped with 100% of a trading tariff for the mere fact that they are trading, importing, and exporting with Russia. All the while, the world is looking for other energy sources in a bid to throttle the Russian economy so that it just stops the Ukraine war. So the third tariff that India is looking at is a 10% trading tariff for being an ally of the BRIC, for being a BRICS member. Donald Trump sees BRICS as a threat to American economy, and given that the BRICS had already announced that they had desired to bring a new reserve currency to de-dollarize the world, was in a way an open challenge to the American administration and the American system that is entirely reliant on the world moving with dollar as the reserve currency, or majority of the countries moving with dollar as their reserve currency. Now this tariff for being a BRICS member is a 10% tariff. Now there's fourth tariff that we're looking at, and that's on the India's pharma industry. Now India is a huge generic drug exporter to USA, and Donald Trump had earlier announced that he's going to impose 200% trading tariff on all the drugs coming in from India. Now the fifth possible tariff that India can be slapped with on the top of all these other tariffs is the 25% tariff on all the Apple iPhones coming out of India to the USA market. India is exporting billions of dollars worth of iPhones. They have surpassed China in exporting iPhones to America. So it's a big market, and combined the impact is not going to be minuscule. It is going to be massive on the Indian economy. So now we'll have to look at why India is so reluctant in agreeing to a deal with America. India is initially well within its rights, but then there are other things, there are other considerations that they should have taken into account. Now let's look at where India feels that it just cannot agree to the America's aspirations and to their demands. Now, the Trump administration had asked for a free access into, other than all the other markets where India does not seem to have a problem. Two markets specifically that we're going to talk about is the agriculture and the dairy market. So the Indian side led by their Trade Secretary Rajesh Agarwal. Now he's of the view that if India opens up these two sectors, it is going to jeopardize 700 million lives, Indian lives. And this is where India seems to have drawn a line, that they will not let America, no matter what they do, cross this line. But what was the offer on the table for India, where India saw that it's better not to go into a deal? So the deal, if you're only looking at this 25 or 26%, or the other side, which now, okay, let's come to the other side. Now India was saying that America was saying that they need to be given a free pass, tariff-free entry into India, and inclusive these agriculture and dairy sectors, with a 20% tariff on all the Indian goods coming into the American market. So if you look at the larger context, if you look at the larger picture, on one side we have the 25% trading tariff, and on the other side we have 20% trading tariff. On one side, you can protect your 700 million people and their lives and their livelihoods. On the other side, you're staking, half your population on a new trade deal, which might not even go your way, because then these 20% tariffs will also make your products competitive in the American market. So India thought that it's better not to enter into a deal, but to get some advantage, some leverage on America. What they did was to play a China gambit. Now we all know there was a summit in China. This was a foreign ministers summit, the foreign ministers conclave in China, where the Indian foreign minister Subramaniam Jaishankar had actually, extended overtures to China, asking for improvement of bilateral trade and normalization of border dispute. In a sense, they were asking to pull back armies and normalize the ties between the two countries, and that's not it. It's not an isolated event, but let's keep it to that. So this was their China gambit they had tried to play. Now, America did not buy this gambit, and they did not get any leverage during the trade talks. They had six different trading talks with America, three in India and three in America. So this was a pretty exhaustive exercise that did not bring anything forward. Now the seventh round is expected, but the seventh round is expected past 1st August deadline, which means by that time India would be in the thick of the storm. Now, that's not all. When India realized that it's in for trouble, it's in for a big trouble, what it did was that now their erstwhile nemesis is now, they're looking at him with a puppy dog face, hoping to resume ties with China. Now China is a smart country. They also know that India is a big market, so they wouldn't have said no anyways. So India has now opened up its doors to China, which they had very recently accused of supporting Pakistan in a war against them, where they got the historic drubbing. A country that you had recently accused of supporting your nemesis now is becoming your dear friend. Why? Because America is sort of a no-show. Even if you come into a deal with America, it's going to be a disaster. If you don't, it's going to be a doomed story. So in both these cases, India feels that America is now not a good trading partner anymore. So it's now reaching out to China. As I've said, that Subramaniam Jaishankar has talked about normalization of ties. And rather, I'm going to show you this video. So take a look at this.
As neighboring nations and major economies in the world today, there are various facets and dimensions of our ties. Measures towards normalizing our people-to-people exchanges can certainly foster mutually beneficial cooperation. It is also essential in this context that restrictive trade measures and roadblocks are avoided. I hope to discuss these issues with you in further detail.
So this was Subramaniam Jaishankar talking about normalization of ties. Now let's talk about what has happened post this India raising a white flag to their erstwhile nemesis. Now that was not an isolated event. India has actually done two things. One, it has opened up its market to the Chinese tourists. That means that things are moving forward in the right direction between India and China. There has been a thaw. The thaw in the relationship is sort of melting down, and there's a slight degree of warmth between the two countries now. But that's not it. There's another thing that has taken place. There has been recently a JV between a Chinese company and an Indian company, and these two companies combined are coming together for producing tablets and for producing phones. So which means that this one move will pave ways for several other JVs that we'll be seeing in coming days, coming weeks, coming months. And this will bring both these countries closer, and these will help both these countries foster better trading ties. Now, that's not it. Because I have told you that now America does not seem to be a good bet for India. And it's not only that America is not a good bet. India, because of their diplomatic stupidity and diplomatic ineptness or diplomatic naivety, They have sort of offended much of the Western world. Now, it's not only America that they have now offended, it's also Europe, because Europe is not seeing India in a good light because they're trading with Russia, and that too extensively. Now they're bringing in 30% of their fuel from Russia, one, and they're bringing in a lot of their military supplies from Russia, a lot of sourcing a lot of their military equipment from Russia, and both these things is not sitting down well with the European market. And the NATO chief has already warned that if India does not either they do not quit trading with Russia or the Russia does not agree to a truce with Ukraine, he's going to make it sure that India gets slapped with 100% of a trading tariff. And that's not it. There's more. There's always more for India. Two firms, one shipping firm and the other and some oil firm, Niara or Navara, that has been sanctioned by European Union. And their captain, one of their captains, Abhinav Kamal, if I'm not forgetting his name, he also got sanctioned by the European Union. So he becomes the first person, first Indian person, not a kind of an accolade to have, but he becomes the first Indian person to get sanctioned by European Union. So we're looking at a lot of the financial troubles that are coming India's way. So they cannot afford to offend the entire European Union. America, okay, they can work around it. They have some leverages to make sure that things do not go haywire with India, with America. But with European Union, they do not have that kind of a leverage. So that means they have to divest. They'll have to look elsewhere to source their energy from, to source their petrol from. That is going to create a new problem in India because India is buying cheap oil from Russia. Going elsewhere means buying oil on competitive prices. So the combined effect of what is India is looking at is huge. Now, first thing we have to understand where this entire trade, this trade tariff stemmed from, which is germane to this entire discussion, entire discourse. Now, India is in a trade deficit of $46 billion. So India is gaining out of trading with America. America is gaining absolutely nothing, trading with India. So even if this loses trade, now America first six trading partners, India does not come in that. India does not lie in the first six trading partners. That means India is not that big a game, that big a country, that big a trading partner for America to worry about them. So, but for India, America is very important. So how is India trying to cut their losses? Now, India has sort of passed the buck because now India feels that $46 billion might come at stake. It is trying to pass it out on the ASEAN countries. Now, the ASEAN countries is a block of 10 countries, which includes Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Laos, and other countries of this region. And India had actually come into an agreement with ASEAN, this 10-member ASEAN bloc, back in 2010. Back then, the trading deficit with these countries was $5 billion, but in 2024, the trading tariff between the trading deficit that India had with these ASEAN countries had swelled to $45 billion. $45 billion. So you see, if India just works out this trading deficit with ASEAN countries, it can sort of mitigate the losses that it might incur towards the Western end. So in a bid to cut these losses, India has reached out to these ASEAN countries and has been working towards that since past 3 or maybe 2 years, since 2023. And it had half a dozen meetings with them, asking them to open their own doors for Indian goods, or if the same trend continues, India is going to revoke the deal. That is going to come into effect. That is going to take effect in another 12 months. That means by another 12 months, if India writes to ASEAN countries that this deal for them is over, it will take another 12 months to take effect. Whereas the American effect is going to be very instant, and the impact is going to roil all their markets, from their, the agriculture market to their textile sector, to their footwear, and to all the sectors. Now, what options do India have at this stage? Now, India is, other than trying to warm things with China, it has two options readily available to it. One is to explore the RIC. The RIC is basically a block of three countries, which is Russia, India, and China. Between them, they can have good trade. They can work out FTAs. They can work out ways of enhancing cooperation, and that would put pressure on the West. Given then combined, India and China become a very big and a formidable force. The other option that India will be exploring is to join the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And this block, India had actually decided not to come to this block because India had come into, had started working towards entering this block back in 2013. But by 2019, it decided not to join this block because China was a big member here. China, Australia, New Zealand, all member of this block. But this block now is very important, very integral, as it seems to India's growth, because it represents 30% of the world's GDP. So the options that India has are there, but what might come from America's way is something that's very unpredictable, because Donald Trump, as challenging his authority and challenging his might. And the last thing that he had talked about in a tweet that he had posted uh, very recently was the non-tariff barriers that India has had imposed within its own borders to ensure that nothing from outside come into their borders, especially in sectors where they don't want. And what India has done, as India has brought in, very wisely and very cleverly brought in these quality control orders. And you will not believe when I'm going to tell you this, they have brought in 700 quality control orders to ensure that no foreign good come to their land that ends up jeopardizing their own market. So, in the larger picture, we see that India is basically putting up to America. India is not giving in to the American demand, which is where this entire equation might not work out the way the Modi government thinks it might. And as far as America is concerned, America has been openly challenged by India. So it's a matter of time when we'll see Trump taking some punitive actions. The one thing the Trump government had done is to write to a Sikh separatist leader that India has branded as a terrorist. He had actually talked about, how his life is under threat. Now there's going to be a referendum in America about, for a Sikh separate land in India. And because we know that India had, very recently tried to murder him, tried to assassinate him, and the entire plot got unraveled because their Raw was reaching out to an FBI agent, somebody who was posing to be an assassin, but in reality was an FBI agent. So the entire plan that was orchestrated by the Indian government got unraveled, and that is where it was seen that India has this ambition of becoming a hegemon of the region. So with these two factors combined, I think we're looking at a pretty rough time for Modi. And I think Modi and the entire Indian government and the people should brace themselves for a tough time. So that's that for today's video. If you liked it, please give it a share and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.